Very excited. It is time now for the Peterborough Roundtable. Of course, as always, it is brought to you by Rocky Ridge Drinking Water Limited, Peterborough's water cooler company, 100 Rupert Street. Across from GE Canada, one of our absolute favorites, it's our man, Brian Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
We don't expect anybody to die around here, sir. Brian Goldfinger, it's been a while. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well. How you guys?
I'm doing good. I told you, I like that blazer you're rocking there,
Thank you so much. Dressed to impress for the big show.
Always very, very stylish. So the last time we had you on, we know that you recently had a child, and I know you had a child before that too, but how's the adjusting to the life with two?
You know, I tell people you go from playing zone defense to man-to-man defense. I think I used that joke last week. There's no downtime, but my wife and I are certainly keeping up. My wife's doing an exceptional job. She's fantastic. So things are going well.
Oh, yeah. Good. What else have you been up to lately?
A lot of running around, frankly, in court, doing discoveries, meeting with new clients on the legal end of things, and watching a lot of Toronto Raptor basketball. It's picked up in my mind of late because since I've been here, the Raptors finally got a power forward. Their first power forward, I would tell you, since we had maybe Amir Johnson or Chris Bosh. So it's been a long, long time since the Raptors have had a power forward, and I've liked watching Serge Ibaka play with the team.
Yeah, it's certainly been fun watching that because you mentioned that's a position that has needed a little bit of presence on the Toronto Raptors for some time. Do you like the makeup of the new roster and what you've been seeing so far? Obviously, it's kind of hard to judge because Kyle Lowry's out for a little bit, but are you liking what you're seeing from the guys?
I absolutely love it. It's just been like night and day in terms of watching the Raptors play with a capable power forward who could guard the 4, the 5, the 3, and can stretch the floor. It's been great. And it was just such a glaring hole. And then defensively, they've really turned things around as well. I've been super impressed by that. And I can't wait to see what they look like when Kyle Lowry comes back. Because, again, I don't think we're getting the final version of the team until we have Lowry back in the lineup.
Do you think that they'll eventually be able to stack up to a Cleveland or a Boston?
With Boston, I think, is a pretender. I got to tell you, I'm not sold on Boston. Boston reminds me of the Toronto Raptors when they lost to the Vince Carter New Jersey Nets, when they acquired all these players from Europe, and they had a very, very deep team, but with no superstar. I think Boston is a bit the same. Like Isaiah Thomas, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's had a fantastic season, but I don't see him as a guy who's going to be able to carry a team in the playoffs. And I see their supporting cast as very good, but not good enough. They have a lot of players who essentially play the same position, and they're very weak in the front court. I think Boston, I don't think they're as good as the record says, and Brad Stevens said that, but I think that was more motivational. But I really think the Raptors have their number. They match up really well against Boston, but I don't think Boston's that good.
We're chatting with Brian Goldfinger. He's our legal analyst here on the Regulars Talk Sports Radio Extra 90.5. As per usual, talking a little bit of hoops. Jordan Mercier here, alongside my man, Colin Teskey.
And still sticking with the Raptors, Brian, how important is it for the Raptors to climb up and win the division? Because we know seeding in the NBA is so important. Do you think that they can catch Boston even without Kyle Lowry?
No, I don't think they're going to catch Boston. I don't think they're going to catch Washington because they're going to need some time to figure things out and really gel as a team. If they finish like third or fourth, probably fourth, I'm concerned about that second round matchup against Cleveland, but you're eventually going to have to go through Cleveland anyways. I prefer to hit Cleveland in the conference final. It is what it is, though. They've had a rough run of luck with respect to injuries. Patterson's been injured for a long time. You have DeMarre Carroll, who I believe is made of glass. He seems to get injured all the time.
Yeah.
He's injured, and now Lowry's out. So it is what it is. In the regular season, I don't think they're going to be able to catch, but playoffs, you never know what'll happen. They're built to win now, frankly. They're built to win right now.
It's very interesting. Tonight's matchup, they are taking on Atlanta in Atlanta. That would actually be the first-round playoff series, and I think if you're a Raptor fan, Atlanta's come back down to earth a little bit. I think they were overachieving early on in the season, but you probably are pretty satisfied with that matchup. I think really outside of Cleveland and maybe Washington, they kind of spook me a little bit.
Washington scares me. That's the one team. Washington and Cleveland certainly scare me. They don't match up well. against Washington. I think Bradley Beal and John Wall, they're such a dynamic backcourt. And for whatever reason, we cannot seem to contain Marcin Gortat, who's the big Polish center on Washington. He seems to eat Valanciunas' lunch and seems to always perform really, really well against Boston. And then Otto Porter Jr., their great 3-guard, always seems to have DeMar DeRozan's number. Like, it's like Otto Porter is DeMar DeRozan's kryptonite. He just can't perform against him. So Washington's a bad matchup for us.
Looking at the Western Conference, obviously injuries have kind of played a factor there. San Antonio catching Golden State, are pretty close, only 2 games back there. But do you think when it's all said and done, is Golden State still that team that you see going to the finals?
If Durant comes back healthy, yes. Without Durant, I can see Golden State losing to San Antonio. Just they've invested so much money in their star players in Durant, Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. But beyond that, there's really not much. I don't think that a front court of JaVale McGee, David West, and Zaza Pachulia is going to be enough to beat a team like San Antonio without Kevin Durant.
David West, one of my all-time favorites, but yeah, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
David
perhaps.
West is like my grandfather, right? David West just runs around grabbing rings. He's like, well, what team's going to be the best right now? Well, now it's Golden State. Well, I'm going to go there and play for the league veteran minimum. Like, the guy just wants a ring so bad, just buy one off eBay at this stage.
I was going to say, that kind of cheapens it, doesn't it? If he'd won with Indiana, he put in some good solid years there, 4 or 5 years, but then yeah, you're right. He jumps to San Antonio. They don't win. Now he's in Golden State. And then who knows what's going to go on there.
Maybe he'll come to Toronto next year.
Yeah, maybe he will come to Toronto.
Yeah.
It's a good sign. We were chatting with Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law right here on Talk Sports Radio, Extra 90.5. Are you into the NCAA basketball, or are you completely about the pros?
You know what? The NCAA lost me when you have these one-and-done players, because it's more difficult to follow a team. Before you had the one-and-done, when I say one-and-done, I mean players playing 1 year for their college and then going off to the NBA.
Right.
You could actually see that player and that team develop around that player, so you got a sense of how they would perform. Now you have no idea the theme of the team, the way they play, the style they play, because there's so much turnover, especially with the talent. So it makes it more difficult to follow. And because it's more difficult to follow, I'm not into it as much anymore.
You like watching those Duke teams of the early 90s with Christian Laettner, where you knew he was going to be there for 4 years, the Fab Five at Michigan. Yeah. You build up a fan base around a core of players. Yeah. I kind of definitely agree with it. I'm a Michigan State fan. They're usually pretty good at keeping a core together, but certainly any team that John Calipari coaches, you're going to be seeing a completely different roster the next time around.
Yeah, he gets exceptional talent, but and then the Cinderella stories aren't as big stories anymore. Like, is Gonzaga winning or advancing to the Sweet 16 such a Cinderella story nowadays? It's not. And what you see, though, are these small schools with more senior talent and more senior players. They're often beating the teams with more turnover, partially because there's that familiarity, but also because they're more developed in the sense that they're older men and they're stronger. So there's a huge difference than, say, a kid who's straight out of high school versus a young man who's been in an NCAA college program and training in a college program for 5 years. It's almost an example of men versus boys. And I use that example and that analogy as well when it comes to CIS football. CIS football in Quebec, the Quebec League, you have people who are playing, they're basically men playing against boys in the OUA at some points because of the CGIP system and how they get through and the extra years of eligibility that they have.
I got to remember that next time. We're going to bring you on to break down the Vanier Cup.
Cup. You'll see the schools from Quebec and the Francophone players who went through CEGEP, they are older than all the Ontario guys, especially since they've taken away the OAC level in Ontario, and they go into school straight out of grade 12. So you have just or on average, the kids at the Ontario schools are younger than the men, so to say, at the Quebec schools, and it makes a difference.
I knew that Laval was cheating. I knew it. Wait a minute. They're like the New England Patriots of the CIS. We're chatting with our man Brian Goldfinger here on Goldfinger